Here at Paid Media Pros, we love a good lead generation campaign. So much so that we've created a lot of videos for a number of different lead generation campaign types on all sorts of different channels. And if you want to check those videos out, you can watch them all right here. Today, we're going to extend that list just by one channel. We're going to talk about Snapchat. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through start to finish how to make a lead generation campaign with Snapchat ads. As with most of our videos, we are in the Paid Media Pros placeholder Snapchat account, so there are no campaigns in here. This is going to be the first campaign setup that we've gone through. So you won't see any performance or impressions, and I won't have any performance to show you at the end of this campaign build, but for right now, we're just going to try and get one set up. So to get started building our lead generation campaign, I'm going to come down here to Create Campaign. And then I'm going to click Advanced Create so that we can take full control over our ads, create multiple ad sets in the campaign. The first thing we need to do is choose our campaign objective. And for the sake of this video, we are going to choose lead generation because that's the kind of campaign we're trying to create. But if you want an overview of all of the other campaign objectives, considering how many there are, we have another video that you can check out at the top of the screen right now. So for now, I'm going to click lead generation and then go through the remaining setup pieces. So if we scroll down, you can see that we have the objective is lead generation. Status is going to be active. We are not making a split test. You can put together your start and end dates if you want to. You can then have a daily and lifetime spend cap put in place. For now, we're going to skip all that. We're just going to click next. The next piece is that we need to set up all of the ad set level details. I'm going to go through these relatively quickly and refer you to other videos because most of the different settings, targeting options, all that good stuff is going to be the same for a lead generation campaign as other campaign objectives. And I would rather focus this video on the more lead generation specific pieces. So let's go through each of these sections pretty quickly. And as I mentioned, I'll refer you to other videos when they're relevant. So the first is that you get to create an ad set name, set up a snap pixel, any app tracking, and then we get to choose the budget and schedule. All pretty straightforward on that front. We then get to choose the placement options, the location settings, any of the demographic sections. And then if we scroll down, we also have all of the different audiences and device settings that we can use for any of our Snapchat campaigns. So most of these different pieces that I mentioned are going to be covered in our Snapchat targeting options video. We have a new one just released for 2022 because the platform has made some adjustments. So if you're interested, you can check out that video at the top of the screen right now. But for right now, we're going to go ahead and skip down to the remaining sections, which are going to be around the delivery. So we've got status is active. Goal is going to be a swipe up, which will be the equivalent of a click on your ad. And you might be thinking, well, I want to get lead generation form fills, so shouldn't my goal be leads? That is already going to be associated with your campaign objective, like we talked about earlier. And the goals here are only going to be swipe up and story opens. So depending on which ad format you're going to use, and we'll cover those here in just a second, it might make sense for you to switch from the swipe up goal by default to a story open ad. But that's probably only if you're going to use a story ad format and not if you're going to utilize a single image or video or a collection ad. So depending on which ad format you're going to use, be sure you choose the right goal here. For the most part, my guess is that a swipe up is going to make the most sense for most of you. Lastly, we get to choose the bidding strategy. You can use auto bid, target cost, max bid. I'm not going to go through those specifically today, but we might put together another video for those different bidding strategies. Now let's head to the next section where we're going to spend the bulk of our time, and that's going to be creating our new ad. As I mentioned in the last section, because of the goal for the ad set, you get to choose between a single image or video, story ad, or collection ad format, depending on how you want to convey your brand. We've put together a video already that covers all of the Snapchat ad formats, and you can check that out at the top of the video viewer right now. And because we have that video, I'm not going to go too far in depth here, and I'm not going to change anything from the single image or video ad. But just as a quick rundown, you start off by putting in the name of your ad. You then get to decide if you want to link your brand name to your public profile, and then you get to choose that public profile. You can then add in your brand name, the headline, decide if it's going to be shareable. Then you get to upload, create, or browse any of the different media options that you want to use. And then finally, we get down to the point where we start talking about lead generation specifically. The first is going to be the attachment type for the Snapchat creative. And on Snapchat, attachment basically means the destination that somebody is going to go to. So whether you want to send them to your website, to your page, a lead generation form, you can change all of that by adjusting this. For this campaign, you can only do website or lead form. But since we are trying to do lead generation, you want this to be the lead form because when somebody swipes up on your ad, you want them to be taken to the lead form so we can generate leads. Lastly, you get to choose the call to action, which is going to basically be the text down at the bottom that somebody would swipe up on. You can utilize apply now, book now, get now, more, or sign up. That's it. Those are the only options you have. There's nothing else in that drop down. For now, I'm just going to leave it as sign up. And now we get to the bulk of what this video is going to be. It's going to be around designing your form. You can see over here off to the right, there's an example form that they use only for illustrative purposes, but this gives you an idea of what a form will look like for the end user on Snap when they engage with your ads. You can see there's a header image, you've got your brand name and your brand tagline. Then there is going to be a bit of a form description followed by the form fields that will populate. You can see that some of them are mandatory with an asterisk after them, and then others like the sample short answer question does not have an asterisk, telling me that it's probably not mandatory. And there's also a multiple choice question down below. We'll get to all that as we go through building the form, but the place I want to start off is with the form settings up here at the top. This is where we're going to select the fields that we want to include to generate leads for our business. So I'm going to open this drop down, and you can see the first thing that we have is going to be this description of the form, where you get to describe your offerings. This will correlate to this form description text over here. So it'll show between your company name and profile and the different form fields that you're asking for. So anything that is relevant to you, you can put that information in here. So I'm just going to put in a little bit of a placeholder text. We don't currently have email alerts for when new videos go live. If you want to see that, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, but for the sake of placeholder text, this is a relatively decent description. You want to use this information to tell people what they're signing up for. Odds are your ad creative has already done that, but it doesn't hurt to follow up with a message being pretty explicit about what they're signing up for when they fill out the form. The next section is going to be the actual form fields that we're asking for. So you can see that it defaults to first name, last name, and email. And if you hover over the email portion, you can see that you can get rid of it by clicking the X, but you cannot utilize that for first name or last name. And then you also get an error that says you need to include either phone or email in your lead form. So this is a little bit different than most other platforms. I've never seen something tell us that we had to include certain fields, but there are always things that are going to be different. So let's go ahead and put email back in here. But as you can see, there are a number of different fields you can ask for: the person's address, their birthday, company name, job title, phone number, and postal code. Those are all of the different preset options available, which means that if this person has this information associated with their account, it should pre-populate to at least some degree. But this does also give some indicators that if you're running any sort of B2B campaign, you also have the default options to utilize things like company name and job title to try and find more business-oriented users on the platform. If I try to add all of the different available fields to the form, the only error I got was when I added postal code in addition to address. You can only use address or postal code in a lead gen form. You cannot use both. So just choose which one makes the most sense. I think address is a little bit too personal, so postal code it is. But there's no issue in adding all of the other form fields. You can make the form as long or as short as you want, as long as you have first name, last name, and either email or phone. Next is going to be to add your company's privacy policy URL. Make sure that you've got that in place. I'll just put in our placeholder URL, that way it doesn't throw any errors. And that'll close out this first section for form settings. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. And now we can start to get into custom questions, where we can ask for responses to questions that are valuable to the business, and you can create up to 3 custom questions. So if I open this drop down, you can see that the first prompt is just to add a question, and then we get to choose which type of question we want to ask. There are 4 different types, and again, you can only have 3 custom questions. So you can use any combination of the short answer, date widget, multi-select, and single select. You could use 2 short answers and 1 date widget. You could use 3 multi-select, any combination that you want here, but you only get 3. So let's talk about what each one of these is. Start with short answer. This is effectively an open-ended question so that you can ask the user any question that you want to that requires them only to type in a short answer. So let's go ahead and do this. Unfortunately, the preview off to the right doesn't really show you the exact form that I'm creating, but you can see a sample short answer question here, which is going to have the prompt, of short answer question, which here would be what's your pet's name? And then they have an open field below where they can type in the answer to the question that you've asked. These short answer questions are ideal for a scenario where the answer is relatively short so that the user doesn't have to type in a lot, but it's not something that falls under the original pre-fill form questions. Since there's already one in there for birth date, it doesn't make sense to ask, what's your birthday here? You should probably use that in the form settings section with the pre-fill questions. Let's go ahead and add another question utilizing the date widget. The builder for this looks identical to the short answer question, but to the end user, it's going to look quite a bit different. We don't really have an example of what it looks like, but you can see here when you hover over this information section, use a date picker to ask Snapchatters when they would like to engage with your offer. The date will be based on the Snapchatter's time zone. We don't have any way to visualize what this would look like other than you effectively seeing it, and I personally haven't seen it before, but you do get to enter a specific question here to prompt the user to select a certain date. So a common one for me would be this. For a number of different B2B accounts that we work with, we utilize lead generation forms to schedule a call in advance and allow the user to pick which day and sometimes even which time they would like to have a phone call. That way the client is not cold calling them and missing them when they're not available, and the user is more likely to answer the phone call because they're expecting it, and more likely to be engaged because they chose their own time ahead of time. If you have a different type of business, maybe you are a hair salon, something like that, you can ask, what day are you available for your haircut? And then we'll call you back and schedule a specific time. All sorts of different scenarios of how you could use this date widget. The next question we're going to do is going to be a multi-select, but you can think of this basically as a multiple choice question. We do have a bit of a view of what it's going to look like over here. Even though this is a single select widget, we do have the option to see that it'll have a prompt and then it'll have a number of different dials next to the options that we have in here. But since this is a multi-select, that means that the user can select multiple different answers before they submit. The single select option will only allow them to choose one, which we'll see here in just a second. But for this ad format, we're allowed to create the question or the prompt itself. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. And now I can add anywhere from 1 to 4 potential answers for the user to choose from. So I'm going to go ahead and create some placeholders here. And now I want to add in additional options. So I can just click Add Answer and then create the other 2 options that I want to put in here. So now I have a multi-select question that says, how do you get to work? And people can choose if they take their car, the bus, subway, mass transit, something like that. If they walk or bike, or if they work from home. And if they have multiple of those, maybe sometimes they walk and sometimes they use a car, they can click the button next to each of them to indicate that sometimes they use a car, sometimes they walk or bike to work. Now the last type of question I already talked about a little bit is going to be single select, and you can see here that the button to add a question is grayed out because we're only allowed 3 custom questions. So this brings me to another good prompt, which is going to be how to get rid of a question. So if you have something on here that you don't want, all you have to do is click the little trash can next to it and it goes away. And now we have the new option to create a new custom question. So I'm just going to click the drop down and go to the last type, which is single select. And this format is going to be identical to the multi-select, but you're asking the user to only choose one option from your drop down. So the previous question I used allowed somebody to choose multiple different options because there are a number of different ways you get to work depending on which day it is, what your projects are, that sort of thing. But let's choose another question that should just have one answer. If something by definition is your favorite, it is singular, so having a favorite color should be something where you only have one answer. So then you can do the same thing where you can put anything up to 4 answers in the single select question, and the user will only be able to choose one. I chose this question specifically because if you are choosing a single select question, it makes sense for you to think through what that question is going to be ahead of time. Obviously, there are a seemingly infinite number of colors, so to choose this as a single select, it really limits my options of what I can ask. I can only give 3 samples, and then I have to choose other after that, which leaves a world of difference between somebody whose favorite color is green versus their favorite color is orange, but the only thing I get to know is that it's other. So when you're trying to put together your single select or even multi-select questions, make sure that you've thought through all of the different available options you have because you only have 4 that you can add for the user to select from. Otherwise, you're going to be left with leaving a kind of bucket statement down at the bottom. Okay, that's all for the custom questions section. So I'm going to close this up. And now let's go to the next option, which is going to be form design, where we can customize the appearance of the form. This one is relatively straightforward. We've just got two options. We have the app icon, which you can see here is defaulting to our logo, and the app icon is loaded from your public profile. So that's something that you cannot adjust. But then you can choose a form header image, which is going to be this section up here at the top, which is going to be a pretty big portion of the visual when somebody first gets to your form. You can either browse existing content, which you can see here. We don't have any media because, again, this is just a placeholder account. Or you can upload a new image that you want to have in here. You can see that the dimensions here have a minimum resolution of 375 by 115. Your aspect ratio is a very uncommon one. It needs to be 75 to 23. I have absolutely nothing that fits that shape, for example, and even if I did, the example form off to the right is not going to update, so I'm not going to upload anything, but all you have to do is click upload, select the file from your computer, and you'll be off to the races. The last section that we have down here below is going to be the disclosures, where you can add a custom legal disclaimer and marketing opt-in. So here you get to add a title. They have an example of terms and conditions, and then you can write in your marketing or legal disclaimer. These are likely going to be something that you only need to utilize if you are doing some type of specific giveaway that has legal restrictions, or if you're in a highly regulated industry. My guess is that most of you know if you need to fill out this additional piece, but you do have the option to add in the title and description for that disclaimer. You can then add a button down here for a new consent, and you can think of consent content as effectively asking the user if they want to opt into or out of something. In this scenario, it could be something where we say, yes, I would like to receive marketing materials from the paid media pros, or you can say, no, I would like to not receive marketing content from the paid media pros. You can then decide if the consent is required or not, basically meaning, does somebody have to check the box to submit the form? This would be something where you have a legal disclaimer that talks about the types of people who could enter a contest, or who would be eligible, or what the terms and conditions are of submitting information. And then that person has to check the box to basically say, yes, I've read the terms and conditions and I consent to them. Then they can submit the form. You can also make this form field not required, which would make more sense for opting into or out of receiving additional marketing materials. You can only add 2 pieces of consent content, so make sure that if you have a number of questions you need to ask or get out of the way, that you're prioritizing those and phrasing them in such a way so that you can get all of those pieces of consent accomplished in just your 2 questions. The last piece that we need to fill out is going to be around delivery, so we can decide if it's active. You can add in your impression tags, swipe up tags, and any other information that you need to add in here. And then at the end, all you need to do is review and publish. The last thing I want to talk about really quick is how to see performance from your lead generation campaigns and how to download the leads that you generate. As I've mentioned a number of times, this is our placeholder account. We don't actually have anything running and I don't have any performance. So instead of utilizing the interface, I'm just going to walk you through the Snapchat help section that shows you what types of information you can see and how to download your leads. Overall, it's pretty simple. In terms of measuring your lead form campaign performance, you'll be able to add in metrics for total leads and cost per lead in the Snapchat ads interface. All you need to do is customize your columns, and then you can choose from the attachments section the leads and cost per lead information. So you can see here that they have it under attachments. Leads and cost per lead is where that's going to be shown. And then once you apply that set of columns, you'll be able to see that performance right alongside your other performance metrics in the interface. To access the leads themselves, you can see here that it's relatively simple. Once leads have been captured, select Download Leads from any lead gen campaign in the tab. So you can see that they're still on the Campaigns tab because you can see ad sets and ads here. They've got some examples, but then in this native leads column, there's a little section down below that you can download leads. This should feel very similar to how you can download the leads at the ad level in Facebook. So at least in Snapchat, it's coming through at the campaign level, which is great. Then when the export configuration pop-up window shows, you need to make sure that you have account leads selected, and you'll be able to download those directly to your computer. You can see that there will be a notification to download your CSV file once everything has been configured and everything's finalized so you can download them. As of right now, I do not believe that there is any sort of automated integration with Snapchat and any sort of CRM platform like HubSpot or Marketo. Additionally, Zapier, to my knowledge at this point, also does not have access to Snapchat lead generation ads. That could easily change in the future if this product gets used a lot more and people have a demand for it. But as of right now, you'll need to manually download all of your leads that come from your Snapchat lead generation campaigns. Overall, Snapchat lead generation campaigns should feel very familiar to anybody who's run lead generation campaigns on any of the other social platforms that we have available. And they can be a great way to ensure that you're getting leads from users without making them leave the Snapchat platform. Hopefully I've covered all of the setup questions you had in this video or referred you to a video on Snapchat that can help answer any additional questions. But as always, if you have any follow-ups or if you have any suggested video ideas for us, be sure to leave a note in the comments below. Thanks for watching our video. If you thought it was useful, give us a thumbs up below.
We release a new video at least once a week, so if you want to get notified of when a new one comes out, be sure to subscribe to the Paid Media Pros channel.